But the problem today, I think, is that the philosophers have got hold of this technology and they're presenting it as liberation theology. At least some of them are. We've been through this, of course, before in the middle of the 19th century. In the midst of industrial revolution, the philosophers got hold of that. Marx thought the industrial revolution would free us from work, would free us from inequality. He was, of course, entirely wrong. And we have a similar kind of discourse, a similar kind of philosophical debate emerging today about the promise of AI. We're told that this AI will liberate us from our bodies. That's really what Martin is saying, that we'll live forever, that our minds will be replicated, they'll be up in the cloud, we'll never die. If we go insane, if we get Alzheimer's, somehow our essence, our kernel will remain. We're told that AI will liberate us from work because we'll have these smart machines which will do our labor for us. They'll drive our cars. They'll do our medicine. We'll go to an artificially intelligent agent, an algorithm, to be taught. Perhaps one benefit is we'll avoid lawyers, but apart from lawyers, I worry deeply about the impact of AI on the expert professions of the 19th and 20th centuries, the very professions that represent the backbone of our economy. The problem with this promise is it's not being thought through. It's being thought through philosophically, idealistically. We're not thinking about it in the context of the real world. We're not thinking about it in the way in which these technologies, and we've already had a great deal of example of this during the digital revolution, that in spite of all the great promise of the internet, and I've written extensively about this, in spite of all its great promise of democracy and egalitarianism and opportunity, it's actually created new elites. The promise of artificial intelligence, these grand philosophical frameworks, they forget about the realities. Jaron already talked about the AI of language being owned and people's labor being appropriated. Who is going to own these platforms? Will it be Google? We all love Google, of course, in some ways, and yet Google is the largest, the most valuable, the most powerful company in the world. Google are the ones who just made the breakthrough when it comes to this artificial agent being able to play Go. Google is pouring billions of dollars into AI, as is Facebook, as is Amazon, as are the other giants of Silicon Valley. Do you trust these guys to benefit mankind? Do you think they care about us? These aren't bad people or bad companies, but they're focused on profit. They're focused on monopoly. They're focused on owning that technology. We haven't thought this stuff through. The promise is scary. The promise is that the technology is moving way faster than we are, politically, culturally, existentially. We're not ready for this yet. We're not ready to replicate ourselves, whether it's in 50 or 100 years. We haven't thought it through. We can't imagine the cultural, the social, the economic impact. We haven't thought about AI in the way it will destroy labor, destroy jobs. What are we going to do when we have these machines that do everything for us? How are we going to create value? How are we going to feed and clothe ourselves in a world where all this technology will be owned by increasingly monopolistic companies? So we can't at the moment trust AI. We can't trust its promise. One day, perhaps, but there are a lot of problems still to be resolved, and for the moment, I would strongly argue that you should not trust the promise of AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew Kean. And